please silence all cell phones. Now let's welcome the president of Salem Academy and College, Dr. Summer McGee.
Welcome to Salem Academy and College's third annual Health Leadership Forum. We welcome guests from around the state and around the nation, from health systems and health-related organizations, educators and students from neighboring high schools and academic institutions, as well as our Salem students, faculty, staff, and alumni. We could not be more thrilled that you have joined us here today to be in community and to be in dialogue together. I'd first like to this morning thank our sponsors. We are incredibly grateful for our partner sponsor, Novant Health, to Thrive More, our supporter sponsor, and to North Carolina Biotechnology Center, a contributor sponsor this year. We could not do today's event without the compassion, the dedication, and the commitment of these organizations and many, many more throughout our community. So thank you. Thank you to our planning committee that has worked this academic year to ensure that Salem's third annual Health Leadership Forum is a tremendous success. I'd like to thank this morning Catherine Knapp-Watts, our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, Janae Joyner, our Chief of Staff, Jason Robertson, Associate Professor and Director of our Public Health Program, Emily Smith, Director of Internships and Pre-Professional Advising, Charlotte Vale, Assistant Professor and Director of our Leadership Program, Shannon Maloney, Forsyth County Department of Public Health, and Stephanie Yoder, Nurse Educator, Northwest AHEC. This morning, it is my privilege to tell you a little bit more about Salem Academy and College. At our historic institution, we have been educating girls and women for now 252 years. And Salem occupies a unique and special place in the history of America's educational ecosystem. As the oldest educational institution for women and girls, Salem has been providing and ensuring educational access and opportunity to make the world better for generations. Salem Academy is the nation's only boarding and day high school with a STEAM focus: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math on a college campus. We are truly a college preparatory academy because our students have the opportunity to attend high school alongside college students to explore their passions and their interests. We are nationally recognized for student success because of our STEAM focus. Salem Academy helps girls transform into exceptional women who will leave their mark on the world. At Salem Academy, we invest in our students to become remarkable, outstanding leaders that significantly will impact our communities and our world. Here you will find brilliant future leaders who will aspire to make communities stronger, more imaginative, more compassionate, and more creative. That's who Salem Academy is, and we could not be more proud to be part of a community that privileges and creates opportunities for girls to learn in such a unique learning environment. Today, we are proud to launch a brand new website for Salem Academy that tells the stories of our students, our faculty, and staff in a way that we have never done before. We know that the women who have attended Salem Academy for generations have changed this community and communities around the world. So I encourage you to follow the QR code in your program to visit the Salem Academy website today.
Since 1772, we've been empowering girls to lead. At Salem Academy, we're proud to support a strong academic focus on sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, while emphasizing the power of creative arts. With a dedicated faculty and rigorous curriculum on a college campus, we prepare girls for college and life. Our institution provides a unique learning environment where you can find your passions, cultivate your curiosity, demonstrate your courage, and prepare for your future.
Come join us at Salem Academy and be remarkable. Changing the world starts with you. And now it is my pleasure to tell you a little bit more about Salem College. Salem College is the nation's only national liberal arts college exclusively focused on health leadership. Salem College encourages our students and future graduates to understand the power, the importance, and the complexity of health in our society. Salem College has adopted a new mission statement that clearly articulates our values and commitments to the liberal arts, to women's leadership, and to creating a healthy world. We are incredibly proud to be an institution that is focused on equipping future leaders so that they can face the challenges of our world, be the problem solvers who will come up with the solutions and have the courage to face those challenges head on and to advocate for change. We are committed and remain steadfast in our values to honor and respect our students as individuals, to develop their leadership potential, and to prepare them to create healthier and more equitable communities. And even with this new mission statement, our fundamental goal remains the same: to ensure the empowering opportunity that education provides to all communities and all who have been previously underserved. With the power of knowledge and the skills of leadership, the generations of Salem College graduates to come will make the world a better place. Today, we proudly launch a new website for Salem College that tells an incredible number of stories of the successes of our alums, the work of our current students and faculty. So I encourage you also to visit Salem College on the web today to see the distinctive way in which we are pursuing liberal arts education and the way in which we are pioneering into the future to change the face of higher education, to change what it means to educate students today, and to give them unprecedented opportunities to understand the ways in which health impacts our society, the way health impacts us as individuals and aspiring leaders, and the way that communities can come together to make change.
Since 1772, we've boldly defined the possibilities for women. At Salem College, we're proud to be the only liberal arts college in America with an exclusive focus on making healthier, more equitable communities. Our tradition of excellence is grounded in educating the whole person, developing the character as well as the mind. We are cultivating the next generation of leaders to be fearless, to be original, to be their best. Our focus is on you and on creating an environment where you can create lasting friendships, cultivate your unique talents, indulge your passions, and learn how to lead. Your journey begins here. Together, we can build healthier communities, a healthier nation and world.
Come join us at Salem College and be remarkable. Changing the world starts with you. And today you join us here at Salem Academy and College at an unprecedented time of momentum and success for our community. Enrollment is growing at both the Academy and the college. We have been recognized in unprecedented ways by publications like the New York Times, Washington Monthly, U.S. News and World Report, and Niche as an institution that is committed to ensuring economic diversity, social mobility, opportunity that changed the lives of individual students as well as communities and families. Salem Academy and College has been recognized as a national leader committed to ensuring access to educational opportunity and empowering women. And at the same time, Salem Academy has been recognized for offering the best boarding school experience in North Carolina. So as you are with us today on our campus, please know that we are incredibly proud and excited to welcome you as part of our friends and family, a place that remembers the reason why it was founded, that educational access and opportunity is more important than ever. Institutions like Salem Academy and College must continue to exist because we still see that women continue to be underrepresented in leadership positions across most industries, but particularly in STEM and in health. Gender equity in pay, power, and policy remains out of reach for many. We continue to see major disparities in opportunity and outcomes for women locally, here in Forsyth County, across our state, nationally, and globally. Women's health issues receive dramatically less funding for clinical research, for pharmaceutical development, and public policy making. Caregiving and other financially unrecognized contributions to our economy and our world are disproportionately performed by women, placing unfair burdens on the women of today. As an institution, Salem prepares students who care deeply about these problems and who are equipped to solve them in the future, to become the leaders who ensure that our world is more equitable, more healthy, and stronger in the future. We hold this conference today to highlight these issues and to remind us all that we should both remember how far we have come and also consider how much further we must go together to promote healthier communities and better outcomes for all. Today is a very special day in the life of any institution. The reveal of a new branding campaign, websites, and stories for our institution to share with you. We thank you for joining us on this particular day to celebrate these landmark accomplishments for our institution. Today, Salem Academy and College celebrate a new branding campaign theme, Be Remarkable. Be Remarkable honors the accomplished, impactful, and unique alumni who have been part of the Salem family since 1772. Be Remarkable represents the current students in our community who aspire to be leaders who change the world. Be Remarkable is about our remarkable prospective students and their families who aspire to join our community and make their mark on Salem. Our Be Remarkable campaign affirms our commitment to educating successful, strong, impactful future leaders. We invite you to celebrate Be Remarkable with us by visiting our new websites, using the QR code in your program, or if you're on social media, we encourage you to share your thoughts about what it means to be remarkable using the hashtag Be Remarkable across social media today and for many more weeks to come. Thank you for being here as we launch these new ideas and concepts, as we come together to talk about issues that face our society. This is a really special day for Salem Academy and College. We thank you for participating in this celebration and this dialogue with us. I know we are going to have a remarkable day. It is now, thank you very much. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Brett Woods, our Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of the College.
Good morning. Oh, there you are. I knew you were there. My name is Dr. Brett Woods. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of the College. It is my great pleasure to be here. I've only been in this position for about a little over 3 months now, and to participate in the Health Leadership Forum for my first time is exciting. One of the things that I've actually been thinking about, just sort of standing behind the stage, is I should have pulled my daughter out of school for this. My daughter, Violet, is 13 years old. She's an 8th grader. And just looking through the program, I would have loved to have had her seen the leaders that are presented here today that look like her. And I think about the power of that and the power of how we view ourselves in this world and we view our potential in this world often by what we see around us. And the fact that Salem College is providing this Health Leadership Forum with these wonderful leaders to provide not only what is possible, but to have that model, that representation that says, this is something that you can do. You can be a leader in this world. You can make your mark on this world. And I have to say it, you can be remarkable in this world. So it is with great pleasure that I be here and participate in this. It is an honor to represent the faculty and represent the students of Salem College, who I cannot say enough about. The care that the faculty give to the students here at Salem College is second to none. And I'm excited to be a part of that, and I'm excited to be a leader among great people such as the faculty. And I'm excited to be among such great students at Salem College. It is so fun to get to know each and every one of you, and I look forward to get to know more of you as I continue to be your dean and your vice president for academic affairs. So it is my honor to introduce one of those wonderful Salem College students, Jonna Cohen, Salem College senior, majoring in health science with a public health minor and a member of the college honors program. Jonna.
Hello, my name is Jonna Cohen, a proud member of the Salem College class of 2024. On behalf of the student body, I would like to welcome you to Salem Academy and College and to our third Health Leadership Forum. Our keynote address is made possible by a generous gift from the Katharine Graham Howard Lecture Fund. As an alumna of the Salem Academy class of 1913 and the Salem College class of 1917, Ms. Howard established the Lecture Fund in 1975 to host renowned speakers on campus, encouraging Salem students to consider careers of public service. From the beginning, Howard made her mark in life. In 1914, she was the captain of the Salem Academy basketball team, in part because of her height. Later in life, she rose to political heights, one of a small number of female political leaders in post-World War II America. In 1952, Howard spent many months campaigning for presidential candidate General Eisenhower. After his election, in part because of the public speaking skills she gained at Salem, she was appointed Deputy Director of Civil Defense, the first woman in that role. After this, Howard traversed the US and to NATO in Europe, speaking about the need to be prepared for future natural and human disasters, including the prospect of nuclear war. In all her work, Howard advocated for a larger role for women in government. We believe Katharine Graham Howard would find Salem's health leadership focus as an ideal intersection of her greatest beliefs and goals. Now, it is my honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, Dr. Jewel Mullen. Dr. Mullen is the Associate Dean for Health Equity and Associate Professor of Population Health and Internal Medicine at the University of Texas at Austin Dell Medical School. Throughout a career encompassing clinical, academic, policy, and administrative roles, her purpose has been to improve the health of all people, especially the underserved. She is recognized nationally and internationally as a leader in building effective, community-based chronic disease prevention programs and for her commitment to improving individual and population health by strengthening coordination between community, public health, and healthcare systems. Please welcome Dr. Jewel Mullen.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to me. It's an honor to be here. I knew I had been invited to speak to the forum, but in paying attention to the fact that this is the Katharine Graham Howard leadership presentation, I thought I should also take a little bit of time to learn on my own a bit about Katharine Graham Howard. And I have to say, because I like to learn and I like libraries, if I had had a chance to go to Cambridge and go to where there's a collection of her works at the Radcliffe Library, I think I would have found it really interesting, because I'm certain there would be lots of leadership lessons that I could learn just from reading more about her work. But that being said, I think we've already heard just from Jonna's introduction that she showed the importance of showing up, that she embodied the importance of women's being in the room, the importance of having the courage of one's convictions and working in teams to tackle hard issues in the name of service. One of the things I read is that she may have been one of the people to witness the release of one of the atomic bombs, the testing of one of the atomic bombs. And so doing something like that, where you might be thinking about this as just a defense practice, has to also make you think about the implications for society. So with that in mind, I come here today to talk some about this topic and this title that when I reread the title that I sent for today, I said, really? I said I'm going to talk about that? Leadership and service and health, like it's too long a title, and what am I going to say? And I do not just want to recite what I've done in my career, which I don't consider over yet. So instead, I thought I should share some of my leadership journey from a particular angle, a journey through which I have never relinquished my primary identity as a doctor, because I decided I wanted to be a doctor when I was around 11. And there was something I knew about, just maybe because I had a mother and a grandmother and father who all paid attention to health. The way you live influences how healthy you're going to be. But that being said, I had parents who smoked. My mother smoked Winston's, and ultimately my father smoked Salem's. So I smoked in what I call stereo, because I had parents on either side of me smoking, and I hated cigarette smoke. And I know where I am standing right now. I know where I am. But I still got in the habit of saying and going around saying to people, you know, smoking is bad for you. So friends who knew I wanted to be a doctor would always say, she's going to be the Surgeon General. So I've never been the Surgeon General, but I still have, if I go back to my old neighborhood, people who say, it's the Surgeon General. But I also never told myself, when I grow up and I'm a doctor, I have to be the Surgeon General. I never said, ultimately, that's the one thing I need to be in life, because what was most important to me was that I could be a doctor to help people and make sure they got the best care that they could. So some of you have heard my title, Associate Dean for Health Equity, and you might think, well, I'm the person at my medical school who's responsible for diversity, equity, and inclusion, because, you know, health equity and equity share that E word. But I don't do diversity, equity, and inclusion. I never have had a job in that, and I don't have particular expertise in it. It's not that I don't think it's important. So I lead with that ongoing belief that all people have the right to be as healthy as possible. And for me, and what I remind people about myself is that when I say all people, I then say, you know, I care about old people, older adults, because you don't hear people say that all the time. They talk about kids are cute. I used to say, yeah, kids are cuter, they would get more attention. And we don't necessarily maintain the same value for people as they progress through their life years. But older adult well-being has always been a priority for me through my clinical work, my public health work, and my policy and my administrative endeavors. It may not have been as apparent to me when I started medical school and when I did my first rotation at the age of 22, where as a medical student at Mount Sinai in New York, I was posted at the Veterans Hospital, the Bronx VA. So I was going to be doing 6 weeks of internal medicine, my very first clinical rotation at a VA hospital where it was very likely at that point at the VA, I would go for 6 weeks and never see a woman patient. All the patients were going to be men, and that was going to be my training. But there I was already, because I had my white coat and I had my stethoscope and I had had 2 years of basic science training. So in going to see my very first patient, I was all ready. I was ready to apply my book knowledge, my physical diagnosis skill, my ability to formulate a diagnosis and consider a treatment plan. So I went in to see Mr. John, who had been described to me as a patient transferred from a nursing home with end-stage prostate cancer that had spread to his bones, and he was in severe pain. He had no family, just a conservator, no caregivers coming to see him. And I walked into a room to see a man, frail bones encased in wrinkled skin, curled up on a stretcher, not establishing any eye contact. And when I cheerfully said to him that I was the medical student there to help him and asked what I could do for him, he told me that he was there to die and I should leave him alone. I tried to just see if there was anything else I could do for him. Didn't want to try to ask him all the questions I knew we were supposed to ask people or examine him, but he just said, leave me alone, I came to die. So I went to get my intern and said, I don't know what else to do. So the intern said, come, let's go talk with him. And when we walked into the room, Mr. John was dead. And I learned then that perhaps that was the best course of action that we could have taken. We honored his wishes, and there was very likely nothing we would have done to even ease the pain that he was suffering through. And that's been an important reminder for me over time. Just because you can do things doesn't mean you need to or that they're good for people, even if you think they're a good idea, whether or not it's a clinical issue, a public health issue, or a policy issue. My next patient, Mr. O'Malley, was also admitted, assigned to me. He was going to be in the hospital for 6 weeks for treatment of an infection. Turned out he had a heart infection. And in those days, you had to stay in the, excuse me, you had to stay in the hospital the whole time. He was bright-eyed, he cheered me up, probably could tell how nervous I was. And when I told him my name was Jewel Mullen, he said, Mullen, O'Malley, Irish, we already have so much in common. So what if he was white and I was black? We had a connection, a connection. We had a connection, and he had veins that rolled. So every time I had to go put a new IV in him, I felt sorry for him and even sorrier for myself because I could not get an IV in him without sticking him more than once. And he probably could see me sweating. What we would do, because he would say, nope, you have to do it, we would talk, and I got to know him, got to know about his history in the war, World War II, his family, his daughters. We bonded. And ultimately, because he was there for so long, I got to meet his wife, his children, and I figured they had heard about me as the doctor, or the student doctor who couldn't put in an IV, but I had heard so much more about him and the context of his life. Also really, really important, because he wasn't just a person in a bed, and I got to learn about his dimensions, the fabric of his life, and the importance of seeing people and their humanity, honoring their needs. That applies to individuals and it applies to communities. They're multidimensional and context matters. So carrying lessons like that through my clinical training also made it important to me to move myself from having these opinions that all people should be healthy and there are right or wrong ways to think about things, to creating a framework for myself to deliberate about the preferred ways to do no harm and to provide benefit to people. So I studied bioethics, and that was my foundation for actually becoming someone that some people think is a health equity expert. I tell people, I'm actually a leadership expert, but I have these principles that I apply to help us engage in just decision-making. I studied public health to get a better understanding of the context that influences people's health. And I did a postdoctoral fellowship in psychosocial epidemiology. So all of you students who are learning about social determinants of health, they're not a new concept. They're really informed by psychosocial epidemiology. And I wanted my research to be about older adults, physical activity and overweight in older adults and minority adults, and what influenced it. Well, I thought that was really important. But the people that I was working with at Yale, at the university where I was, said, nobody's interested in that. Obesity's not a disease. Obesity's only a problem in Black women. I was interested in these are the things I was hearing that were for you faculty out there, the things that make you wonder if you can stay in your research career when you don't know whether or not there's going to be support and value for your interests. I was interested in whether or not physicians counseled people differently based on their age or their weight or their race and their ethnicity. And people said to me, you can't get funding for that. Nobody's interested in that. Maybe a decade later, the whole field of research around implicit bias was hot. I try not to say I told you so, I just keep showing up. So my colleagues, or maybe colleagues, who were still at Yale said to me, you were just ahead of your time. There's nothing wrong with you if people haven't caught up with your thinking yet. So not able to do the research side, I probably wasn't going to be best at that anyway because I wanted to do something about what the research showed. So I decided I should be in charge. So I decided I should be in charge. So I decided to become, I took a job as the medical director of a neighborhood health center where I could have some authority over how we took care of people. And because I care about older people, I made a great partnership with people who ran senior centers through the Urban League in Springfield, Mass., where we created a program called Living Longer Better. Physical activity, health information for older adults, and I took medical students and residents there to the program with me to do role plays to subject them to having older adults, give them feedback on their interpersonal skills. And I also wanted students and residents to see that people that they normally see in a hospital bed with a gown on actually have lives outside of a hospital, lives that we can restore them sometimes, or not harm them so that they can return to their previous state of function before an episode of illness. We did all kinds of things, and my students actually learned that the patients even still wanted intimacy. We started taking condoms with us, and every week that we did that, the bag was empty, and we would just say, take them to your grandkids. So whatever they did with them, if they were using them, then we were also cutting down on the risk of sexually transmitted infections among people that some people thought weren't at risk for them anymore. People and their humanity. Those are the kinds of themes that I carried through when I went into state government and became the president of my organization of fellow health officials, the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, where I had a national platform and I could launch an initiative. So people said, so what are you going to do? And I said, healthy aging. And somebody said to me, there's no money in that. So you faculty, you administrators, you students, have you ever heard those things before? If you haven't, you will at some point. So I figured, well, there might not be money, but there would be. But as soon as I said it, people started saying, thank you so much, can we be part of that too? Which led to great partnerships with the Alzheimer's Association and AARP, area agencies on aging, the organization that was the strongest advocacy for LGBTQ older adults, and on. And together, we had a national platform for Living Longer Better. I used the same title as what we had done in Springfield, which was also important to me because it was sad for me to leave my folks in Springfield and say, I'm sorry, I'm leaving you as a doctor and a health promoter, and they had said to me, we need you to go do this for us, because they knew I could represent them. I was able to meet former Surgeon General Jocelyn Elder, who came and was a keynote speaker for me when I launched the program. I hadn't ever been the Surgeon General, but she was, and in my view, she was a Surgeon General who never got the recognition that she deserved. So it was important for me to have her show up at the age of 80 plus and give that talk. But I could do that because I was the president, and that's how I chose to use my influence at the time. So even as I've gotten to Texas and to Dell Medical School, I still stay in touch with so many of the people that I've worked with over time who still say, we know you care about healthy aging. And now some of the colleagues in state public health who were telling me there's no money in it have been the recipients of grants that they say they only got because of what we did when I was the president. And I don't care whether or not anybody knows what I did back then. What's most important to me is what's happening now. And I also know that I'm in Winston-Salem, where at Wake Forest, there's one of the sites of a very important study looking at the possibility of lowering the risk of cognitive decline through the SPRINT mind trial. So, these ways in which a career weaves really takes you places and builds connections that intersect in ways that you never can expect. And it doesn't have to be frustrating as long as you know why you're doing what you do and can stand up when people say things that are, I always tell my kids, don't say stupid, but that just sounds stupid, or that they're not quite ready yet. Because things along the way will also get you mad. So when I advocated for Medicaid coverage for older adults to get dental care, there were dentists where I was working who said, why do that for old people? They're going to die anyway. Why do I tell you that now? because there are so many people who have to hear things that they don't know what to do about it in the moment. And sometimes maybe there's not quite anything to do. Sometimes it's not what you do or say in the moment. Sometimes it's what you do after. And what I tell people is when things like that happen, don't get mad, don't get even, get strategic. So now, as I think through and have people ask me, so how did you do this or that? I say, teamwork, leadership. I'm a Taurus, I'm stubborn. Sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes my idea is not so great. Having facts doesn't necessarily make you wise, so there's a lot more to learn. Sometimes it's about incrementalism. Being ahead of one's time can be a problem. Now I'm on a college campus with a bunch of students who say, your generation, you just want to be incremental. We need change to happen now. Are there any students in here that might be thinking that about your faculty and administrators? If so, don't raise your hand, but just consider what your role is into helping move things forward and how you lead along the way. There's so many leadership lessons that I could share. Maybe I'll get to come back and tell you some more at some point. But I want to leave you with this. People ask me, have you always been a truth teller? That's their nice way of saying, I'm blunt, or I say what I think, but I always do it respectfully, or that I'm willing to say things that other people don't want to hear, even if those things come out in the form of a question. But questions can sometimes be intimidating. Leadership requires courage and risk-taking, including the risk to fail. I can also tell you about things I tried that didn't work. Leadership does challenge us to also think about using our resources well. Leadership can be lonely. Leading people doesn't have to be, because we need followers. So leadership has to be, through leading people, a team effort. So I'm going to stop by hoping that you believe I showed up being my authentic self today, because it's the only self I know how to be. And by understanding that even sometimes when you have a career like mine that has changed many times, people might think you haven't made up your mind about what you want to do, when actually what you're doing is just what you want to be doing, but different versions of what it takes to work on behalf of others. And to do that with humility and staying trustworthy brings people to you rather than away from you. I think we need that more than ever in our society in every way possible right now. And I congratulate you for being remarkable and for what's going to come. Thank you. Okay. Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen. We now have time for one question, so if you have a question for Dr. Mullen, please feel free to come to one of two standing mics in the aisle.
Okay, so my question was, what inspired you to focus on older adults in your work, and despite the challenges that you face, or what was one of the challenges that you faced with that despite the lack of support for that field?
I was really fortunate to grow up in a community that was built as public housing post-World War II. So we had veterans living alongside young families, including people who were amputees, because we were built to have accessible apartments. I'm fortunate to come from a family with tremendous longevity. So thinking about Catherine Graham Howard, my grandmother during World War II was a Rosie the Riveter type. She drove a stick shift Rambler. My grandfather taught her how to drive a Model T. She lived to be 109, and she was cognitively intact until then. It's so easy to be in one's generation and think life is harder than it's ever been, the world is worse than it's ever been. The wisdom that you learn from people who have had it harder than we have, who never had this kind of stuff, who never had opportunities, who maybe couldn't vote, who couldn't control their own money, and who people assume that just because of their gray hair or their wrinkles, they're past their prime, makes you realize how unwise that is. And I think I've shared with you, part of the disappointment is more the disappointment of hoping that as a society, we also start to value older people more and invest so that all of us can be healthier as we age by being healthier in our younger years. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Mullen for such an inspiring start to our Health Leadership Forum. My name is Catherine Knapp-Watts. I'm the chair of the Health Leadership Forum Planning Committee, and it's my job to tell you that we're going to take a break in just a second. A couple things to note about the break. There are refreshments in the gallery that are sponsored by Novant, and I hope that you'll enjoy those. Also, we want to encourage you to visit the exhibit tables in the gallery. There's one that has general information about Salem Academy, Salem College, and our graduate programs. There is a table about internships. If any of you who are community professionals are interested in having a Salem College or Salem Academy intern, we hope that you'll stop by the table and we can give you more information about that. Additionally, we hope that you will enjoy the amazing art exhibit in the galleries. Our featured artist is Kirkland Smith, who uses repurposed items and challenges our consumer habits by repurposing items, plastic items that are usually discarded, into fine art. Working with the artist, our Salem College art students have created a piece that's in the back corner of the gallery here, and we invite you to join us in this assemblage piece. There are all kinds of plastics that you can put onto the piece and be part of creating this work. And when you're doing that, we hope that, like you will think about, like us, you will think about being careful consumers and careful caretakers of our environment. So with that, we're going to take a break. Please be back in your seats at 10 o'clock when we will have panel 1, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats as the program is about to begin.
Yep, everybody has one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, good.
Feel free to grab. Yeah, like that. It's okay. I'm trying to think of like the best way. Is this?
And we're following this sequence of who answers first on each question, or are we doing free form?
I'm not in charge.
Free form, because we don't remember who's going to go first on what. Let's do free form.
Okay.
Hello? Okay, sorry, little mic test there. Welcome back. I'm Professor Zhang. I work here at Salem, and I'm here to introduce you to our panel and then let you all learn from their discussion, which I'm very excited about because these are new fields for me as well. So the goals of this panel are to highlight the range of approaches, lenses, and issues that examine the life of the mind for individuals and families and neighborhoods. Specifically, we want to hear about the research and work of these experts who focused on intergenerational challenges, including trauma, and a discussion of the ways in which their work mitigates the impact to improve the quality of individuals and communities. By drawing on the expertise of our esteemed panelists who represent the arts, psychology, and medicine, we hope you will see how an array of academic backgrounds and experiences led our panelists to the good work in which they're currently engaged. Finally, we would like to conclude with our understanding of what makes confident and courageous leaders in health today. So to begin with, our first question, we'd like to provide some context about the life of the mind, and I would like to ask each of you to provide a brief description of your line of work, as well as giving us an idea of what your typical day might look like.
So I guess I'm supposed to start. This is really loud. Is that loud for everybody else? So I am Stacy Drury. I like to consider myself kind of a hybrid or a mutt in terms of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I am currently the chief of psychiatry at Boston Children's Hospital and a professor and chair of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. Both of those things were things I swore I would never do. So unlike our first speaker, I bet my mother I would never go to medical school and had to give her $10 when I went to medical school. I fell in love with science as an undergraduate and really thought I would cure cancer or some other disease by studying genetics and doing gene therapy. Turns out I didn't do that and ended up moving to Louisiana with a boy because it was more fun than where I grew up, which was Cleveland. So we moved to New Orleans, and I went to medical school because I thought we're going to stay in New Orleans, and the longer I'm in school, the longer it'll take for me to get a job. So I completed my MD PhD at LSU and inadvertently fell in love with psychiatry. And what I loved about it was that it was the place during my medical rotations where I saw change, where I saw incredible transformations. And similar again to our first speaker, it was also a place where there was such a need to improve outcomes. And along the way, I ended up spending a lot of time learning about trauma and adversity, and spent time with people in the School of Public Health, which taught me that trauma can happen directly to an individual, but it can also happen to a population, to a culture, to a community. And trauma in the United States and in many other places in the world is embedded with structural racism. And so I became a listener. and listened to the stories of the particularly women of color in the South. And the first thing that I learned was shut up and listen. And what I learned was that the roots of psychopathology and the roots of the biologic basis of trauma were in those stories. And it drove me to really develop a line of research focused on understanding the biologic mechanisms by which adversity in multiple forms is transmitted within and across generations, and was really driven by a couple of key facts. First, parents are the best protective factor for children. So if we want to grow healthy grown-ups, we have to grow healthy babies. Babies are really cute. I will say grandmothers are also really cute. And I specifically say grandmothers because if I want to address the impact of adversity and trauma, I need both babies and grandmothers to be part of that solution. And so my work really focuses on engaging with minoritized and marginalized populations, listening to their stories, and then really trying to get at the mechanisms, because what we need to do is we need to understand those mechanisms so that we can create healthy babies, that we can create healthy grown-ups, so that we have grandmothers that get to play with those babies for a really, really long time and their great-grandchildren. And so my day-to-day work is focused on calling out structural racism. It's focused on training the next generation of clinicians so that they are better at listening. And it's about really seeking to transform child mental health. That's my job now, because we're doing a really bad job. And I think this is such an incredible place because the students that are here, you are going to be so critically important for fixing all of the stuff the grown-ups are screwing up right now. So use your voice, use your collective strength, and make sure that you realize you are as powerful as you believe. And that, I think, is my most important goal now, which is we need to get rid of the leaders that are here, not the leaders here, but like the ones upstairs. And we need to make sure that we create the next generation of leaders to be better listeners, to be better at accepting, and to really stop the violence and hate.
So my name is Jackie Vasquez, and I'm a mental health therapist here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. My day-to-day is hearing people's stories, so I get to see clients from all kinds of walks of life. I love working with trauma and addiction. I particularly work also with immigrants who are having to change everything about what they know and come to a country that they know nothing about and then raise their children in between those two cultures. Trauma is a particular part that I love working with because trauma takes us to places where we can't help but feel the depth and the acute feelings that trauma brings. And so people get to come into the office and put everything on the table that they don't get to put in other spaces. And sometimes they leave the office feeling like, I've been able to get it out. And then sometimes they leave the office and the work isn't done. But part of the work that I do is to be able to organize people's stories. And so that the story becomes a healthy thing for them, even if it was born out of a place of no help. I get to work with, when people ask me what my population that I work with, it's easier to talk about what I don't work with. I don't work with children. I get too emotionally involved, so they're off the table for now. But I work with everything other than children, and so I do get to work with young adults. I get to work with older people, and Dr. Mullen, just music to my ears, because there is such a relationship between national depression and not having good relationship with elders. There's such an idol worship of youth in this culture, but I don't know if anyone has heard of the blue zones, where people are living into their hundreds with, you know, cognitive excellence and physical excellence, and when we take care of our generations, we all are healthy and benefit. So I do get to work with, you know, from your younger adults, your teenagers, to older folks, and it is beautiful to be able to hear people's stories where they're at and be that space where they can say whatever they want to say and not be judged. It's beautiful work.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Lokan. I go by Lika. I teach at Miami University in Ohio. I'm a gerontologist, but like Dr. Mullen's speech this morning, it's not a straight path. I started out in engineering, I switched to fine art, I studied education, and then I studied gerontology. So what I did from this crooked path is combining them all to create the Opening Minds Through Art program, or OMA. OMA means grandmother in Dutch and in German. I'm Indonesian, and we were Dutch colony for 350 years. So I called my grandparents Oma, and I have 16 grandchildren, and they call me Oma. So OMA is the acronym, but what it does is it connects younger college or high school students with older adults who are living with dementia and support the older adults' creative process. So along the way, the students learn how to appreciate and communicate and connect with older adults who are living with dementia. And the older adults get the opportunity for creative expression and social engagement. And both of this population benefit from this one-to-one direct interaction, because we need to create social change one person at a time by creating society that is inclusive of people of all ages and all cognitive abilities. And if we can do that, we can have a better society. And that's what OMA is. It's social change one person at a time, involving younger and older adults into a direct collaboration that goes over time. It's not a one-shot, you know, volunteering one time. It's really developing a relationship over the whole semester. So that's my work.
Mm-hmm. In each of your areas, you approach trauma either with colleagues or clients or constituents in different ways. So first, can you tell us, how do you understand and define trauma in your own work area? And how do you work with your constituents to mitigate the effects of trauma? And I'd like to start with Jackie.
Yeah, one of the difficult parts of working with trauma is that there are various definitions, and we have not come to a consensus of what trauma means. You know, there's big T trauma, there's little t trauma. There is part of trauma that is objective, such as, you know, folks who went through 9/11, that's objectively traumatic. There's a subjective trauma, which, you know, affects people differently based on their background. But trauma, I believe, is the response that a person has to an event that they feel like they don't have the capacity to handle. So I would start there as far as the definition of trauma. The way that I work with trauma in my office is to be able to sit in that space before attempting to move out of that space is essential. So normalizing trauma, I think because we live in the United States, which is such a great country as far as freedom and wealth and opportunity, we don't expect to suffer. Suffering is no longer an expectation for us as a culture, and so we are not dealing well with the suffering that happens. So being able to accept that you're going through a thing, People often come to the office, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I'm like, well, you've been through this horrendous thing. How do you expect to feel? So being able to stay in that space and work through it is key for being able to move out of it. So as a clinician, I encourage people to stay in that space, understand that space. What has that space given and taken away from you is more important than trying to rush out of that space. Again, trauma makes us feel so many deep things. And most of us go through the week and we're not in tune or attuned to what we have experienced because life is a blur. Trauma makes you slow down. It forces you to slow down and feel, even if those things are not the things that you want to feel, but consequently, you learn how to feel a gamut of things. You learn to slow down and savor the good feelings when you've had a lot of bad ones.
I work with people with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. And Alzheimer's, there's no cure. It's a neurodegenerative disease. So the trajectory is always down, but there's no cure. So it's a tragedy to be diagnosed with such a condition, but there's no way out. So we don't see this traumatic experience of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's as a trauma that you can work through and get out of, because there is no get out of. Death is the end of it. For now, people are still researching and trying to find cure, but there isn't. It's always going down. So we don't, in my field of work, we don't use the word suffering with or suffering from or combating the disease, or because we have to live with. So we live with Alzheimer's, we live with dementia. And while we are in this stage of living with dementia, there's still a lot of things we can do. There's still life to live, so we don't give in and give up, but we also don't try to overcome the trauma, but we live with it. So we don't use the word trauma in this field of work.
That was really cool, sorry. So I think about trauma as the experience of something that it leads to a loss of something that people value. Or a threat to a person or a family or a community. And that can be a threat to your own identity, a threat to your safety, a threat to your ability to grow your own family in the place that you want it to be. And that threat causes a physiologic response. And I worry a lot about the disconnect between the physiologic response to a shift in your environment or your experience that is leading to a loss, or to something that will lead to you having an injury or someone around you being treated unfairly, and the actual biology that changes. So we all have experiences that trigger us to be more alert, to be more aware, that trigger that fight or flight response. And we need to use that to understand what's happening in our environment. And so when I think about this from the clinical side, it's about how do I help people understand that that's going to happen. And for the trauma of racism, we really talk about racial socialization as a core way of addressing it, which is building your understanding of these things are happening because of other people's problems, not yours, and that you will be living your life differently. And I think that's a traumatic experience every day. Like, I didn't have to teach my son that he kept both hands on the wheel when the police pulled him over. But if my son were black and I lived in the South, I would absolutely have taught him that before he drove a car. That's trauma. It is that disconnect between what should be a safe place and what is not. And so when I deal with it, I really try to go into the science and the data and say, how is it that we can help you until we can address the trauma at the policy level, that we can call out that we as a nation, despite our strengths and greatness, are filled with hate, and we treat people differently because of how they look, and that we are traumatizing ourselves. And that is why we have a public health, mental health crisis now. And so I use the lens of trauma at both the direct exposure and how our communities have shaped it within families and cultures. And I think that's my lens. It leads to the biology and really making sure that we are making biologic changes as well as addressing sort of the psychopathology and the symptoms.
So all of you have to have collaboration in your jobs for it to be effective, right? And you're working through a variety of differences. You've got racial differences, age differences, country of origin differences, language gaps, all sorts. So what I want to know is, can you tell us a way that you've had to work to connect across these differences? And within that, what did you learn about yourself?
So as I mentioned at the beginning, my job by definition connects people, younger people and older people. And so there's age differences, that's the first one. And the second one is the younger people don't have dementia, then the older people have dementia. So that's a cognitive difference, that's a second difference that they connect through. But then in addition to that, there's usually other differences, gender, socioeconomic status, race, sexual orientation, whatever. So, but at least two, but most likely more than two differences. So what is surprising to me is that even the most timid and shy and afraid student, once they are put together after a few weeks with the same partner, they have the desire and the ability to connect, because we are, evolutionarily speaking, programmed, designed to connect socially. So it always impresses me and motivates me to do my job, because I see this blossoming of the young person and the older person as they get to know each other, spend time together. They come out of themselves and they flourish, really, both sides flourish. And that ability is within all of us, even if we don't feel like we're a people's person. Like if you ask me, what's my ideal time? I would say, oh, walking in the woods in the fall with all the green and colors of the leaves, or swimming in the ocean in the summer. All these descriptions have no people in it. But actually, people is what gives you joy. And so I would encourage everyone to tap that inner connection that you can have, even if you don't feel like it.
So in my field, there are lots of differences that you have to work with as a counselor, you know, and it's really great because as a counselor, you want to be very client-centered, you want to be very non-judgmental, and so you get to hear all kinds of value systems that are different from your own. And the most important thing is to meet the client where they're at. It's not about bringing the client where you're at. So I get to hear my older clients complain about the younger generations, and the younger generations complaining about the older generations. I get to hear Republicans and Democrats. I get to hear all sides of the stories that, you know, we live in polarization. And so I'm in this space, and when I think about how it has affected and changed me, is that there's so much richness in difference. You know, I am challenged every day to evaluate my own thinking and my own values and my own norms, so that I can understand and be and love people. And so you don't do that if you're sitting every day with the same folks on your left and on your right. There's not that richness of growth and expansion that can sometimes be uncomfortable but necessary for you to be well-rounded in your ability to think critically. So difference for me is just a richness of experience with people that are different from yourself, but that you can learn to value where they've come from.
I would say that the thing that I think is most important as I think about differences and just where people are is humility. And I think that it is so important, so I'm a physician, yay. But when I walk into a room and I see a patient, I need to be humble. I need to be grateful that they are letting me be a part of their life and telling me these really important, very personal things. And when I'm a researcher and I'm working on health disparities and racism and violence, I need to be humble. I need to sit with the grandmother on the front porch in the 9th Ward. I need to hear her stories of why she loves the 9th Ward and also why it scares her for her grandchildren. And that is, for me, the most important part about valuing differences is being humble and never thinking that you know everything. And always keeping around you people that challenge that and loving it when they prove you wrong or tell you you're wrong. I learn so much more from my mistakes and my own biases than I have ever learned from being right. And so I would encourage you guys to be humble, yet remarkable.
So I've got one more question. And since you all have been in the hot seat up here on the stage, it's a chance for you to put that on the audience a little bit as a challenge for what they can do. So I want to ask, what do you hope to see in the next generation that would enable your work to grow and flourish? Tika?
2 things. 1, transformational creativity. You can look it up. Robert Sternberg wrote about it. But basically, how do you deploy your wisdom, intelligence, creativity to greater good? Mm-hmm. And greater good, to quote Paul Farmer, Dr. Paul Farmer is a doctor in Haiti. Anyway, he said that we cannot assume that we can change the world without sacrifice. Because sacrifice is what distinguishes us from roaches. That's what he said. So, but anyway, we always talk about changing the world. But what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? We can't just get there without giving something, giving up something. I think that's an illusion that we can have it all. And that's the question that you need to pose ourselves. So one thing. And the second thing is liberal arts. Don't stay in an area that get you good at your job. That's a given. Everybody here is going to be good at your job, but you got to go beyond what's good for your job. Read poetry, literature, art, history, all kinds of things that's going to, philosophy, give you the kind of depth that make you actually happier in the long term and more effective in your job, even though it looks like there's no connection. But there is connection. So liberal arts and transformational creativity.
So I think that the thing that I would say is important for the next generation of leaders is the spirit of inclusivity that young people have anyways. I think that's so important to know how to be inclusive. I think it's also very important to know how to listen well. The ability to listen. I got so many clients who, if they had someone that would listen to them, would likely not be in the office. So the ability to listen well, especially as professionals, it is so important to listen, to be able to give a person the space that they need to communicate whatever they need to communicate. And like Stacy said, that takes a lot of humility just to, you know, don't vomit your knowledge at people before you can listen to what it is they're coming to you for.
I want to be transformationally creative. But the other thing I would say is be kind. But be kind to people even when it's hard, even when they have different beliefs that make no sense to you, and even when they're not being kind. And then the other thing I would say is be kind to yourself. We will all make mistakes. I regularly say stupid things and have to pull them back. And the more that we are kind to ourselves, the more strength we have to be kind to others who probably don't deserve it as much. But I think if we start with that, we can go a really, really long way. And just don't ever lose your voice. Don't ever think that your voice isn't important. And please vote.
Okay, so now we do have a little bit of time if some students would like to ask questions to our panelists.
I did have one question. It's open to anyone who wants to answer it. I was wondering, what would you recommend is the best way to teach our youth about trauma and like its effects that it can have on them down their path, and early ways to cope and just combat with it when they get older, or then if they're struggling with it now?
So I would say one of the ways that I like to teach trauma, especially to younger generations, is to have a greater self-awareness of what's going on in your body, what's going on in your thoughts, what's going on in your emotions. There's such a disconnect from our own bodies. So having the awareness and the knowledge of knowing what's happening to me and why is it happening. Often I will read the diagnoses of PTSD or depression, and people don't often put together, oh, this is an actual condition. I didn't realize that all of these things defined PTSD or defined depression. So we've been living in things for so long that they become normal to us. So being very aware of what you're going through and how that connects to what you've been through, what you think, what you feel, will be important to be able to identify the things that you are feeling and going through.
I would add to that the idea that if you're an older person, and that could be like a 16-year-old talking to a 12-year-old, modeling and acknowledging that you've had bad things happen and that you handled it either perfectly or imperfectly is incredibly important. We need to address the stigma that exists around the influence of trauma, right? So trauma is at the root of all of our medical and psychiatric disorders, and we've created this artificial separation. So we whisper about depression and drug use. And we can't do that anymore. 30 to 40% of the population is experiencing feelings of hopelessness. In the state of Massachusetts, where I am, 30% of children between 12 and 17 over the last year thought about killing themselves. So talking about your imperfect days and your negative experiences and saying, this is how I coped and this worked or didn't work, is incredibly important. Because if we don't start talking about it, it's going to eat us away from the inside.
Hey, I would love to hear some experiences that you guys had that had the greatest impact on your careers and also your leadership style.
I have a really good one that sits in my gut a lot. So I started a project to address racial disparities in the South for breastfeeding. And I thought I had all the answers. I was so confident. I was like, I know how I'm going to fix this. And I met with this woman who had lost a baby in the NICU. And for her second child, she had started an organization that provided support to families in the NICU. She was a woman of color. And so I said, oh, I want to have breakfast with her and find out like what it is I can do. And she told me a story about her challenges of breastfeeding her second child. And I thought I knew why. And then she told me that her grandmother and her great aunts used to look at her with disdain when she was breastfeeding. And I said, do you know why? And she said, yes, because my great grandmother was a wet nurse for white children. And so when they see me breastfeeding, they think of racism, and they think of the babies in our family that died because of the grandmother having to feed another person's child. And that was a moment where I was like, well, I know absolutely nothing about this, and I need to pause. And so that, for me, was a really important turning point in my own career.
So for me, I have one friend, y'all. One friend who is unapologetically herself. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Man, and that gave me the freedom to be unapologetically myself. And sometimes that's hard because you're not always sure about all the parts of yourself. But this one friend gave me that freedom because she modeled it. And so bring what you got to the table, because nobody else has that cluster of you that you have. And I think that that has been the most impactful leadership that I've had, is that she's unapologetically her and I'm unapologetically me.
I have another story. I know it's time, but I'll just make it quick. When I was just learning about dementia, I didn't have any background in dementia, so I started visiting nursing homes, and I tried to connect with people living with dementia, and I couldn't. After maybe 30 seconds, they shut down, I don't know what to say, and so on. So this is when I started the work. But long story short, there's one woman named Cora who is nonverbal, who every day just go like this 24 hours, and nobody knew what to do with her. So I said, I have background in art. I wanted to try the Opening Minds Through Art, this program that I'm sort of playing with, and I asked if I could invite Cora to join the program. They say, no, you'll get nothing out of her. She's beyond anything that could affect her well-being. So I said, give me, if I fail, I fail, but give me a chance to try. So I sat with Cora and made art, and all she could do is just blend colors. She can still hold a brush, but even that, I have to support her hand, and then she can, slowly move, and very, very slow. She hasn't been speaking for, I don't know. I never heard her speak. Nobody in the staff heard her speak. But after I do this many, many weeks with her, one day I was showing her something. I was kneeling down here, and I was showing her a painting, and I was talking about, all the conversation is one way, and she can look, I don't know what she gets, I don't know if I came across or anything, but suddenly she went like this, touch my head, sweetie. Spoke, she spoke. The staff was just flabbergasted. I don't know what happened there, but what I learned from that is it's a matter of human rights for people who are unable to connect, to give them an opportunity for social engagement, for expression, and that's what motivated me to continue and grow the program, because it's not the end. We give up too quickly, too easily. So that's what led me to where I am today.
Okay. So thank you, panelists. My name is Jason Robertson, and I'm the Director of the Public Health and Health Science Program here at Salem, and a member of the Health Leadership Forum Planning Committee. We will now take a 10-minute break. Don't get up yet. During the break, we hope you will visit 2 exhibits that are in the gallery on the right side. The program that is founded by actually Dr. Lokan is Opening Minds Through Art, is used here locally by our senior services in the award-winning Elizabeth and Tab Williams Adult Daycare. So we have some of that art by some of the participants that has used creativity and individuality expressed by people living with dementia. And so we have some of that located in our gallery. In the spirit of bringing art into the healing process, we are also featuring the Sawtooth Center's Art and Healing Program, with generous support from the Greer Foundation and strong relationships with local healthcare providers. Sawtooth Center has offered thousands of visual art experiences to patients, caregivers, and support staff, as well as healing classes for our community. At our network luncheon today, tables will be hosted by Salem alumni and a variety of health fields, so Salem faculty and many of our speakers. There is a poster that is outside in the gallery listing the table host and table numbers. The QR code located at the bottom will take you to the bios of each and every one of those hosts so that you can start to have a conversation among your peers or to think about who you may want to sit with. So please return to your seat by 10:50 for panel 2, Women's Leadership in Clinical and Life Science Research. Thank you, and please enjoy. And if you have any questions, you'll see some of us around. Thank you again.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome again to our Health Leadership Forum. I am Courtney Robinson and so honored to be your moderator for today's second panel. So we are going to delve into an incredibly important and timely topic this morning with women's leadership in clinical and life sciences research. So in the spirit of Be Remarkable, today we have a distinguished panel. So we have Dr. Packenham, Dr. Ambrose Hankins, and Dr. Shrestha. And they will help us navigate a roundtable discussion about the dynamic landscape of clinical trials and studies. So I want to start by discussing three primary categories. So we're going to start with clinical research, where you know that this is where medical experts really delve into conditions and treatments, and they're really seeking a deeper understanding of health and disease. We're also going to cover clinical trials, where we'll discuss the critical phase where these potential therapies are really put to the test, and we're trying to ensure their safety and efficacy. And then last but not least, we're also going to talk about observational studies, and those allow us to observe the health trends, identify risk factors, and then also uncover some insights that will guide future research. So throughout our discussion, we'll really explore the pivotal role that women, of course, in leadership on our panel play in these fields, and of course, their unique insights and perspectives that they bring to clinical research and life sciences research. So without further ado, we'll begin our roundtable discussion, and I would like to lead with our first question, which really addresses the ethical considerations. And we want to talk about the ethical considerations that would be taken into account when designing and conducting human subject research, including clinical trials.
So some of the ethical considerations we should consider deal with the Belmont principles. And that there are three of them: respect for person, beneficence, and justice. And when we talk about respect for person, we're talking about autonomy, that an individual has the right to decide for themselves whether they want to participate or not in a study. And that includes if they're in the study and they decide that they want to get out of the study, they have the right to leave the study at any time. It also, if a person has diminished autonomy, meaning they can't speak for themselves, they have to have an authorized person or a legal authorized person to speak for them. Beneficence, do no harm. Do no harm. So that means that we maximize the benefits and reduce the risks as much as we can. And then justice, to treat people fairly without discrimination and bias or undue influence. We also have the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, or the Common Rule, that is basically if a study is through government funds, and we have to do 45 CFR 46, which guides us through the Belmont principles, but also incorporates extra protections for children, for prisoners, for pregnant women, neonates, and fetuses. And of course, the FDA regulations as it relates to clinical trials.
So I can speak a little bit about how it's operationalized in research world. Like all human subject research require, before you can start doing any kind of patient contact and data collection, it has to be approved by IRB, or Institutional Review Board. And what it does is it reviews the detailed protocol about the study. The study needs to include what kind of study design, who are going to be selected for sample, and how, because both are very important in making sure everyone has fair chance, and also describe potential benefit of the study and potential harm, and making sure like the study method design needs to make sure that potential risk has been minimized, and then potential benefit is optimized as much as possible. And then the next step would be to make sure informed consent is obtained from the potential participants. And what does it mean by informed consent? It means the potential participants need to be aware of what the study is involved, what it does and does not, its risk and benefit, and if it's an intervention, what kind of intervention they may receive. They need to be aware if it's, for example, treatment or placebo. They need to be aware that they may receive either. They wouldn't know. And all of these communications needs to happen in the language that the participant can easily understand, so that they are comfortable in understanding what the study is involved and be able to make a decision on whether they want to participate or not. Because it's very important to make sure that you're not coercing anyone to get into the studies. Did I cover everything?
The area of clinical trials that I work in is drug manufacturing. So one of the biggest things that's part of a clinical trial in terms of study recruitment, or before you get to study recruitment, is making sure that you have an effective drug and making sure that the drug that you're actually using for the clinical trial is absolutely unequivocally pure. And when you enter into a clinical trial, you have a good idea of what the dosage is. You're not using a dosage that's too high. You're not using a dosage that's too low. You're making sure that the drug does not have any impurities in it. And you're also making sure that along the way, all of the pieces in the drug manufacturing process, it is absolutely beyond the shadow of a doubt, you are administering a drug that is the drug that is on the label. And when it comes to either drug manufacturing or drug design, it is really important to have, like Anshu was mentioning, making sure that your benefits are outweighing your risks. So whether it be a drug product that is for maybe a terminal disease, so that you are, it's a therapy that you might be able to have a little bit more risk associated with it, but also to have lower risk when you are dealing with more chronic medications.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. And so that does lead us into our next question about the human subject research. So given the ongoing health disparities, how can we ensure that adequate representation of diverse populations in clinical research and clinical studies can be carried out?
So that's a very good question, because you know, diversity in research has been an issue for a long time, and the reason we care about why it's important to have diverse group represented is they provide information that guides us in the research, and the research findings become more relevant to these different populations. I mean, one of the key, especially in public health related research, one of the key intent is to make sure research is generalizable, meaning it is relevant to broad group of people. And without having people from different groups represented, we wouldn't know whether that research finding is represented or is it relevant for them. And then what happens, so the result of that would be, you know, when the findings, when the research findings happen, especially if it is something like treatment, and in today's world, where we have started precision medicine, where having specific information about different groups has become very important. Not having that data, that missing data, means there's this whole group of people who are missing out on some of these type of treatment opportunities. So now the question is, how do we make sure research is more inclusive, they have a diverse population? To do that, you have to, at the beginning of the study, when you're planning out the study, you have to really have a good understanding of who are the people and communities you want to study, and what are some of their challenges and issues that may hinder them from participating in the study. So the best way to do it is to work with some community members and get information from them about the communities that they are from and what could be potential risks to the study, depending on the population. For example, I mean, many of you are probably aware, like when we are trying to study about health issues in African American population, one of the biggest challenges is trust. right? There's history, lots of traumatic history involved. And then how do you build that trust so they would be willing to participate? But there may be also, if you're studying in, let's say, low-income population, vulnerable population, they may be facing different type of challenges, such as just geographic, like if they live in rural areas or if they live far away from where the study is being conducted, they may not be able to come there, or they may not have time. Or if you're trying to study, in my job, I work, I'm a cancer epidemiologist, so I get to work with cancer patients, and many times we are interested in looking at cancer survivors, and oftentimes they may be very sick. So how do you reach these sick patients and be able to gather information from them? Because they may be too sick to talk, too sick to fill out questionnaires. So you have to put a lot of thought in how can we overcome those? How do we design our study such that these things are addressed ahead of time? And also, as you implement the study, sometimes you do have to make course correction. So you have to be willing to course correct as you learn more about the problems that arise, so that you can ensure that these potential participants, they are willing to participate. Another thing I almost forgot was the language barrier. That is another big issue too. If all your data, like surveys, are in English, but you want to study, and your largest community is Latino community, or in California, Asian communities, they may not be able to participate just because of language. So being aware of that and making sure you have those study materials all translated in those languages, and have someone who can speak those languages become very important.
Absolutely. So my area of expertise is in community-based participatory research. So community first, right? Mm-hmm. Community from the first thought to the ending thought. So we go into the community to find out what the needs of the community are from the very beginning. And as research scientists, we have a tendency to think we know what's best. And just like someone on the other panel said, we don't. So we go into the community to find out what's best and what the community says what their issues are and what their needs are. And then we work with them from the very outset, not in the middle, not at the end, but from the very beginning, to say, what are the questions we should be asking? Now, and then how do we proceed from there to find those answers? So we engage the community at every level of the process. And I think that's an important thing. I mean, one thing COVID has taught us, our old methods don't work. We still have health disparities, very pervasive in these communities. So we need to try some new ways and to get to the communities and talk to the communities and find out what their issues and concerns are, and then address those issues and concerns and bring them in from the beginning.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, for trying to create more diversity is just simply the location of a lot of these clinics. Mm-hmm. So if you are able to move away from maybe where the main location might be like a major hospital or major research hospital, having small clinics that are located in several different communities throughout an entire city or throughout an entire geographic region is absolutely crucial. But additionally, to try to meet a lot of needs, it's really important to have time flexibilities for meeting with a lot of these subjects and participants, where you might have a lot of work obligations or family obligations that you need to be meeting. And so being able to have really flexible times to connect with a lot of the patients in these studies is absolutely crucial. And even being able to have virtual visits, if possible, if the study is amenable to that, it would be a huge help to try to increase diversity in clinical trials.
Absolutely. So my next question is actually multi-part. I'll start with the first one, but it's, what are the current barriers to achieving diverse participation in clinical and life sciences research, and what impact do they have on healthcare specifically? If you're able to suggest any practical strategies or promote access for underrepresented communities, and how can those be integrated into the broader research agenda?
So I guess trust. Let's talk about trust a little bit, you know. It's really fascinating that the human protection regulations came forward due to atrocities, right? From the first one, the Nazi encampments and experimentation. And out of that came the Nuremberg Code and then the Declaration of Helsinki that helped us to develop the consent process. And of course, here in this country, the atrocities that we've had here in this country, especially as it relates to the Tuskegee study that went on for decades, where men who had syphilis were not given proper treatment. They were denied treatment, actually, when there was a treatment, penicillin. And even when they tried, in knowing that there was a treatment, they were still blocked from getting treatment. And so what came out of that was the Belmont principles. And so trust, but then also the historical implications within the healthcare system. And many populations realizing that they don't get the same treatments, that there's much discrimination as it relates in the healthcare system. So we can't always say just the atrocities, but mistrust of physicians, mistrust of hospitals, just the total mistrust, right? That has put us where we are today, where people are very hesitant. Minority populations are hesitant to participate in clinical trials. And I think that during COVID, we saw that very prevalent. We actually did a study to understand the hesitancy. And it was sad to hear that people thought that there was a vaccine for others and a vaccine for just them because of the treatment that they had received in the medical system. So trust, that big thing, trust. And figuring out how we revamp that system so that we can build the trust.
Just to talk a little bit more about trust as well, too, one of the biggest problems that we have, not only in clinical trials, but just in health in general, is the fact that so many people are either underinsured or have no health insurance. And so even just trying to enroll people in clinical trials or trying to get the health that they need is close to impossible when they don't have a health insurance. So in a society where you see all the time and you hear all the time of people taking Ubers to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance, if you try to bring somebody into a clinical trial and say, you know, we'd like for you to participate in this, okay, yes, but what's the catch? I see that you're not going to give me a bill, but so many other people give me bills whenever I go to the doctor. You get a bill from LabCorp, you get a bill from your doctor, you get a bill from, you know, your hospital or a pathologist or something. So I think that that's a huge barrier right now, and trying to create better programs and having better programs and better policy for people who are underinsured or uninsured is absolutely critical to having a more diverse representation in a lot of health studies.
And aside from trust, like really understanding what are the limitations, and sometimes it could be financial, sometimes it could be time or geography, and trying to meet those needs would help. And I can share a couple of my experience in some of the studies, what we did and how we met those needs. Some time ago, I was working on Parkinson's disease research where we were studying about environmental exposure in Central Valley. And these are, you know, elderly, very sick people who could not come to, at the time I was to the research center where we were conducting this study. So what we would do every month, we would pack up our van with all the survey questionnaires, blood draw equipment. We're working with neurologists, so neurologists will also come along with us on lobotomy. And we would drive to different locations in Central Valley and set up a clinic. we would arrange all the appointments, and then we'll get there by 8 a.m., regardless of what the distance. So sometimes we're getting up at 4 a.m. to go there. And then all day long, we'll see our patients and talk to them, gather all the data. And then in some cases, if the patients were too sick, we would also do home visits. Mm-hmm. But now, these are things you do really have to consider early, because these involve a lot of resources. And not all research funding is always restricted. So some are able to do it and others are not, but it does help if you have this well planned in the beginning. Mm-hmm. The other study which I'm still currently involved in is a huge national effort, very collaborative effort that's being led by researchers at USC in California. It's a study where we're looking at prostate cancer in African American men. And the reason we wanted to study this was because African American men are more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer and then also die from it compared to the white population. And then when they do have the cancer, it also tends to be more aggressive form, and there's very little information on why that happens. So we wanted to look at what are some of the factors that may be impacting this. We wanted to look at environmental, social, genetic, but in the beginning of the study, and this part actually I was not involved in because I joined a year later, so I can't take credit for it, but whoever came, and I'm sure it's a consortium of people who came up with these ideas, they did an excellent job in making sure they work with community members. So in different states, so it's multi-state studies, in different studies, the PIs from the site, they worked with community members to find out what are the key concerns and how do we address them. And they helped us also develop those materials and make sure the language is also correct. So we're able to use that and get into field and do the study. So you do have to put a lot of thought in how to go about doing this kind of, to ensure, yeah.
I want to piggyback on that to talk about recruitment strategies. Recruitment strategies as it relates to helping communities to understand what studies are available. Because many times they don't know what studies are available to them to participate in. So we have to develop recruitment strategies where we're reaching to all communities for our studies, and that's a part of planning.
Right. That's a very good point, especially in clinical trials these days. The people who need it, they are not aware, because if they go to clinics in rural areas, community hospitals, they're not aware of it. Right. So they don't even get to, participate because of that, yeah.
Okay, so in our last few minutes, I just wanted to make sure we touched on data, because that's such a pivotal role, right, in holding research initiatives. So how can robust data collection and analysis support promotion of equitable healthcare practices and integrity, and what are some primary challenges in this area?
So when it comes to collecting data for most of these clinical trials, if you have a more diverse population, when you're going into clinical trials and when you're trying to apply between phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or phase 4, if you have robust data, your trial is going to simply just be better. You're going to have better data. You can go back to the FDA and you can say, hey, look at how good this trial went with this population and this population. If you have a more diverse population, there's going to be a better argument for that drug to go on to the next stage of clinical trials, because there's not going to be a question of, well, you didn't address this population or this population. So in trying to incorporate more and trying to incorporate a lot more diversity and include more populations, this can also be a cost savings for a lot of pharmaceutical companies to a certain degree. The amount of money that goes into clinical trial or goes into drug development is absolutely staggering. But if you can do, instead of doing one trial at one with a smaller subgroup, do the trial as a larger trial so that you can have and collect more data and be more confident in your results as well too. But when it comes to collecting this data or even designing some of these trials, the thing that I think is absolutely necessary is policy from the FDA. I live and die by, I can't do this because the FDA says that I can't do this. I have to do this and I have to follow these certain particular rules. And I think that it's absolutely crucial for there to be more policy so that we have to include higher percentages of Blacks, Hispanics, and then also have a more proportionate number of men and women in clinical trials.
Like good quality data is very, very important in many different ways. So in my course of work, we have cancer registry data, and we often use that data. When I say we, not only us, but policymakers and hospitals to look at what their community needs are. Where are resources needed? So good data is really an eye to understanding the health burden, and healthcare needs. So it's very important. And what do I mean by good quality data? It's making sure you have accurate data and complete data. So complete data means you make sure you have data from all different types of population that are represented there.
Yes, so I want to sort of bring a different perspective on the data as kind of my little soapbox. Return of results. Return of results to communities and individuals. A couple of years ago, we were doing some studies on a reservation in Arizona, and trying to get people to participate in studies when we helicopter in, and then we helicopter back out, and they never hear back from us. And they said, well, yeah, some scientists came down here and they studied diabetes, because diabetes is very prevalent among Native American populations. But we never heard anything back from them. So they can't advocate for themselves. All the data goes into journals for the medical population, but it doesn't go back to the community. So we have to take all that good data, be able to translate it into a language that we can understand as like community people, and give it back to the community so that they can advocate for themselves and keep the scientists accountable.
Great discussion. Thank you all for your expertise. And now we would like to open it up for questions.
Hi, I'm Sky Sykes, a student at Salem College, and my question was, considering you guys all are women leaders in STEM that have a focus in community outreach, what challenges have you faced to climb that ladder to leadership, and how those challenges help you learn how to advocate for yourself and then those in your community?
So I want to piggyback on Dr. Mullen. You are before your time. When you're doing community engaged research, first of all, it takes years. It takes a long time to gain the trust of the community. But it also, as a biomedical researcher, your colleagues look at you with a different eye. So you're not considered as doing great science, viable science, So it's a struggle. But because what you're doing impacts the lives of people, that humility, that burning in your heart, I want to impact people, population, you keep moving forward. And then one day somebody will say, you were ahead of your time. That the work you've been doing is really great.
I think one of the more important things in my career, as far as as I'm advancing forward, I'm just recently graduated with my PhD, but One of the biggest things that keeps me motivated and keeps me wanting to climb in terms of leadership and health leadership is just having a purpose. Continuously revisiting and taking a look at what it is that I'm doing and saying, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm going to work every day. It's not because I'm getting a paycheck, it's because there's something at the end of the road that I'm looking forward to. And sometimes you have to revisit that purpose and say, you know, this year it feels like this might be kind of my goal, and then maybe next year that might change a little bit too, but also just keeping in tune with yourself and taking care of yourself and making sure that you're on a path that you are guiding and not somebody else is guiding for you.
I agree, that's so important. Like understanding what you would like to do, what's your purpose, and staying true to that is very important in navigating your career. It may not be linear, probably, you know, as you have heard, and my career hasn't been linear at all either, and but looking at opportunities to learn from that and how it feeds into your purpose and keep going forward is very important.
Never give up.
I might add that just being a woman, being at the table and lending your voice is extremely important. They need to hear what we have to say, and it often makes huge impacts far down the line. It's about leaving your footprint, right? And that carries on. So.
Well, again, thank you so much to our panelists. That was a great panel for us to hear about research. My name is Janae Joyner, and I'm Chief of Staff in the President's Office here at Salem Academy and College, and I'm also part of the Planning Committee for the Health Leadership Forum, and I stand between you and your next break. So I have 3 different announcements. First off is to remember the art assemblage. It is out in front of classroom 240, which is on the opposite end of the hallway from where you registered. I found a little doggy and a high heel red boot that I added to this art project. And so I would challenge you to go and find something that represents your authentic self and add it to the art project to help make it remarkable. Secondly, I'd like to remind you about a poster that is outside that has a link, a QR code, so that you can select your table host. We would love for you to join us for lunch in our refectory. We will take you over after our closing panel, and so we'd love for you to figure out who you would like to sit with and what you would like to talk about during your lunch hour. And then thirdly, we have QR codes that are posted around, and we would like your feedback. We want to make sure that this is the best event possible for all of you as we host our 4th annual Health Leadership Forum next year. So if you will please fill out that at the conclusion of today or as you're taking this break. So because we're a little bit behind schedule, I'm going to ask that we get back at 11:45. So if you'll join us back for 11:45 for our closing panel. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
It is my privilege this morning to close out today's third Health Leadership Forum with the entire array of amazing health leaders that you have heard from already this morning. Today's panel discussion is entitled Pathways to Success, Women Leading in Health. And so what I thought we could do this morning is to go a little bit deeper, to talk a little bit more about your leadership journeys, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that you faced, and some of the unique aspects of being a leader in health and in STEM. I promised the group that before we got into the meat of our conversation this morning, that we'd warm everybody up with a couple of rapid fire questions. Now, you might already be warmed up from being on your panels, but so much today you've talked about the importance of showing up as your authentic selves, being who you are, leading from your strength. So what I wanted to do was just kick things off with a little bit of fun. And so my first question is, who is your favorite woman leader, living or dead? Rin, we'll start with you.
Oh my gosh.
First thing that comes to mind, don't overthink it.
I mean, I'm always going to default to my favorite chemist, so like Marie Curie. I really liked the type of chemistry that she did, how groundbreaking it was, and how, you know, she was able to be awarded not one but 2 Nobel Prizes. And unfortunately, due to the work that she did, she passed away as a result, but her legacy still lives on in a lot of chemistry to this day.
I don't have one person but as I grew older, I always looked up to women who I could resonate or I could learn from and inspire my professors, my teachers, my supervisors. And I've been fortunate to work with some of the great women researchers. So I followed them and aspire to be like that, yeah.
My mentor's name is Ann Basting. She's a theater professor at University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. But she started tapping the arts to connect with people living with dementia. And I asked for an internship with her, and she put me in a nursing home for the summer so that I can understand what it feels like to live there. And that's probably the best decision she made, the best education I received.
I'll share mine. Mine is actually a historical figure, Queen Elizabeth I. My father was a historian, and I grew up appreciating history, and I loved the way in which she refused at that time to be defined by her gender, to find a way to lead, to navigate a political system that was incredibly complex and not particularly conducive to women's leadership. I've always really admired and respected that.
I would say mine was my PhD advisor, who was really the one that taught me that it was okay to be your own gender. And she would tell me all the funny stories about how she would walk into a room and they would look at her and they'd be like, oh, you're a woman, they're going to be easy to manipulate. And she's like, and then I took him over. And so it was that combination of elegance and her own love of her students. She put up a playpen in her office when my son was born and told me, she wanted me to finish my PhD and bring the baby in. So I have emulated that.
My mother, Minnie Lee Green Packenham, well, she led me and my siblings, but she taught me to be my authentic self. She taught me how to love and how to have compassion, and that everybody should be respected no matter who you are or where you come from. So my mom.
My mother. For many of the same reasons. She encouraged me to be whatever I could be. And she never said to me, let me tell you how many people are going to try to get in your way. So she didn't instill a sense of, I need to always think I'm going into battle, or that I would need to be a victim, or that I needed to always conclude that if something happened, it was because somebody was doing something to me, because it was so important to be able to think more broadly about context, or you can be defeated.
I feel like y'all stole my answer. That's right. My mother, Ruth Villafaña. She is a wonderful mix of affection, and I will take you down if I need to. She taught me to raise my voice so that I am not victimized, and she taught me to raise my voice if I am victimized.
Well, we had a lot of mentors and a lot of moms on the list, so thank you for sharing. One other quick rapid fire question. One of the things that I think is so important for all leaders, but particularly for women leaders, is that we be self-aware about how to care for ourselves. And we are not often the best at caring for ourselves before we care for others. So quickly, just what is your go-to self-care thing that you do to fill your cup back up?
Oh, I love saying no. Looking at people's reaction. No, I can't because I'm going to the spa.
I smile. Because whatever people might see doesn't necessarily reflect what I'm feeling, but it keeps me in control of what I project while I still can own that some other things are going on. And it makes it easier for me to keep showing up. So I've been told I have different smiles, and that's true.
Sleep. It's how I try to take care of myself, because as a leader, you may not get much sleep. Even when you sleep, your brain is still thinking. I have a pad beside my bed that I wake up sometimes and start writing things down because I'm thinking in my sleep. But I'm a better person and can smile when I get sleep.
Mine is the Peloton. I'm kind of addicted. So it's a little bit of a problem, but I'm getting better.
We're going to have to become Peloton friends after the panel. I actually would also, you took my answer, sleep is like my favorite thing to do, but also when I'm not on my Peloton, walking. Being outside, breathing fresh air, there's something about just that peripatetic movement that helps you clear your mind. And many of you know I do have a treadmill desk in my office as well, so I love to walk.
Walking with a book on my audio book in my headset, because I'm always curious about the next chapter. So I always go out and try to walk in order to read, and yoga.
I like to walk as well. Like when I'm stressed, I make sure I go for a walk, and I like to just have my own thought and trying to process things. And this other thing I also like to do, this is something that I developed as I am growing older, is cooking. Like when I'm chopping things and planning together a recipe, I find it very therapeutic.
I also see my kitchen as an extension of my own laboratory. So it's a laboratory I can have in my house. I can't do chemistry reactions that I do at work in my house. So I like to, at the end of a long day, I like to sit down, stick to a recipe, or don't stick to a recipe. Make up my own thing if I want to. And at the end, if it's a meal that only I want to eat, nobody else in my household wants to eat, that's fine too. But I just like that entire process of cooking, and it's very therapeutic for me.
So today in your panels, you've talked a little bit about some of your journey, that it's not always linear, that you can't often predict what's going to come next. What do you think was most important in helping you navigate those opportunities or challenges? Is there a particular skill
or trait that you think is really important to help women on that journey when the path doesn't lead exactly where you expect it to? Is there something that you think is really vital to helping you identify those opportunities, overcome those challenges? What are some of the things that you think are important to doing that well?
I can speak about what I did and what worked for me. For me, knowing early on what are my motivations and what are the values that I care about really helped, and being proactive in pursuing, initially figuring out what are some of the skills that I'll need to build and go into that path, and making sure I find workplaces that aligns with my values and my interests, and working with people who care about my growth as well as the work in general. That, especially in early career, that had been really helpful for me.
I really like what you said in that second panel about the sense of purpose. I think when you feel a very strong sense of purpose, even if you're not sure what all that is going to look like, there was a lot of doubt that came my way from different people in the things that I've wanted to do. And because I had a strong sense of purpose, their doubt, while it was something to think about, ultimately did not change the trajectory of where I thought I needed to go. And when you have a sense of purpose, but don't necessarily know what that looks like in your job, and you're open to taking the opportunities that come your way, things begin to shape out to how and where you want to go. So I think purpose and openness is the way that has helped me.
And I think that's important because sometimes you get to thinking, do I just need to leave? And then if you leave, you might be abandoning your purpose, maybe having to start over again. So sometimes I say, well, my approach needs to be, if I can't do this, do that. Because if you have a purpose, there might be more than one thing that you need to be doing anyway. But alongside that, to also be open for change if it's necessary. So now I say to myself, if the answer to either of these questions is yes, maybe it's time to move on because I can't accomplish what I want to. And those two questions are, am I wasting my time or am I squandering myself? Because not only do you come with purpose, you come with talent and skill that you want to deploy for it.
I would say the thing that was most important for me was having a partner who was more excited about my success than I was. And I think that was really important because whenever you're trying to balance relationships, you really have to have somebody that is more excited for you to succeed than them or you. And that way you can thrive much more strongly. I'll also say the other thing is to have a no mentor. So I was not as good at saying no. I'm much better. I'm a recovering non-no person. But you need somebody at any stage of your career to be the person you bounce the idea off and says, wow, that's a terrible idea. Say no.
I also think that I'm such a person where I like spreadsheets, I like to-do lists, I like pros and cons lists, I like to see data, I like to crunch data. But at the end of the day, some of the things that have guided me so much have simply just been intuition, like a gut feeling, even though it's not logical. And I'm such a logical person at the end of the day that there are been so many times where I just haven't followed my gut feeling on something and I've really regretted it. And there's some times where you have to just say, this feels right, or this doesn't feel right, and kind of follow both of those feelings.
I think that's very important. And I learned much later in my life about following my intuition, and it's really important, yeah.
And I think you get in touch with those intuition by having a habit of reflection. I think we're too much just do, check all the boxes, get all the things done, and we don't give ourselves enough time or habit of reflection. And then you reflect when I'm 64, So when I'm 64 and suddenly you try to reflect, and then you might not be as pleased as you might have been if you start reflecting now.
A lot of you have talked about the importance of having people who believed in you, whether it was your mother or a mentor or a colleague. What can we as women leaders do to help ensure that the gender gaps we continue to see in leadership begin to shrink? What are some of the key things that you think we as women leaders should be focusing on and doing to help this next generation who's here in the room find those opportunities?
Supporting one another.
That's what I was going to say.
So yesterday afternoon, I was part of a panel planning for a discussion about women's leadership for next month. And I think everybody was holding back until somebody said, may I put my own personal trauma on the table? Some of my biggest difficulty has been when I have not been supported or when I have been undermined by other women.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so there's one thing about really having that one friend, but there's something else about group success as opposed to competition, or a willingness to believe a negative narrative and repeat it, that I think the only people who can disrupt that is us.
Us, yeah.
You want to say more?
No, I agree with you 100%. We as women can be our own worst enemies. Not helping each other, climbing that ladder, not thinking about the next person that's on the next rung, couple of rungs below us. Yeah, I've been hurt by women, you know, and it shouldn't matter what color you are.
Right.
You know, because there is that factor as well in the room that nobody likes to discuss, but it's certainly there. But you're so correct for us to be able to support each other. And if you see a woman that's not going in the right direction, support that woman and say, let me give you some guidance or some encouragement so that you can go into the right direction. So I agree with you 100%.
Stacey, you talked about having someone who is happier than you are about the things that you're doing and the things that you're getting into. And research indicates that there is a true joy in sharing in other people's joy. And so having that and being that, you know, celebrating people and celebrating their strengths. And, you know, when it is time to guide people and be like, this is where your greatness lies. What are you doing over here? You know?
I would say never underestimate how many people are watching you and looking up to you. I didn't ever I got tenure at the associate level, and I never did the paperwork to go up to be a full professor until I had two of my friends, who were not even really mentors but were younger than me, yell at me. And I had never once thought about it as being important to other people at the School of Medicine, but there were only 8 tenured females that were full professors. And so that, I think, is also important. At every stage, there is someone looking up to you and watching what you're doing. And so never underappreciate the importance of the fact that you are setting a trajectory for somebody else.
And I think being willing to participate is very important. Being there first and then staying there. I know there's going to be challenges, different challenges, but being willing to figure out ways to stay there so you don't lose that space is also very important. Yeah.
As a leader, we've talked a lot about your own thoughts as individuals, but especially in health, leadership involves working in teams, interdisciplinary work, diverse groups, a wide range of stakeholders. And I know when I've taught students, the thing that they dreaded the most was the team project, No one wants to have to work in a group or a team. It's so much easier to be by yourself. But the higher you go up in an organization, the more teams and the more people you have to lead. So what is your advice to those students out there who hate those group projects and when they hear the word teamwork, they cringe? Or maybe some of us in our various parts of our own professional journey struggle with that. What would be your advice or recommendation for leading large groups and working with a diverse range of stakeholders?
So I will say, as you progress out of school, it's all team projects. Everything is a team project.
Yes.
Being in graduate school, working on, research projects, okay, well, you take this one portion of the project, you take this one portion of the project, and we'll come together and we'll write a paper, you'll be first author, you'll be second author, And then now that I'm in industry, okay, well, I need you, you work on this aspect of the project just in the exact same vein. But one of the biggest things that I definitely have learned in terms of working as a team is don't say, I did this, I did this. Say, we did this. That's extremely important, because if you're not giving credit to somebody who's working on a project, even if they did a really small thing, and you want to ask for their help later, they may not help you. And you may not be able to achieve your goals if you're not working as a team when you're on projects together.
Absolutely. I think the day of working in your own little silo is gone. As a scientist and a biomedical researcher, we used to just work in our own labs, doing our own little things. But now, as I'm doing environmental health disparities and environmental justice work, you bring everybody on your team. You have to have the biomedical researcher, you have to have the social scientists and the geneticists and the various people in order to make it work. So you have to learn how to work together as a team, like you said. And everybody on the team is important. You couldn't be successful if someone wasn't there doing their particular part. And so it is not I, it is we. Yeah. We're doing this. We are proud of each other. This team is great.
I think laying out the process at the beginning so that every member in the team can, without judgment, say what they're good at and what they're not good at. Yeah. And if everybody can say that before you even start, then
would be better.
When you divide the work, you know who to tap for which part of the task. But sometimes we just jump into the task, the project, without feeling out and everybody coming at the table with their cards open to plan how we're going to proceed, what the process is to proceed. So that's important first step that often get forgotten because we want to get this done.
I totally agree. It's so important to have that process done in the beginning and making sure each one has their role, what they're responsible for, so they can stay accountable to that at the end. And I would say school projects, though, team projects are a great time to practice this and learn how to communicate with each other, because when you're working in collaboration, communication is very important. And sometimes you think, oh, I communicated perfectly, but then when you hear from others what they heard, they would have heard completely different. So it's really important to understand from others' perspective and learn how to communicate in a way that another person would understand, so the work can be done and the project goals are met.
And if I may add, we can bring our respective talents, but we bring our respective personalities. And not everybody contributes in the same way. Some people are actively listening, thinking, and not ready to talk yet. And it's so easy to judge whether or not somebody's contributing if they're not doing things the way we're doing them. So creating that space for contribution doesn't even mean that in that very moment, because some people might not be ready yet.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I personally have very poor networking skills. And so I'm used to very deep and complicated conversations, and I love that. But when it comes to small talk and networking and those softer social skills, so
I'm in a season of growing those skills because I'm having to work with so many people. And because I want my work to reach so many more people, I have to include others, so that the time in the office where it's just one-on-one, that has a place. But for growth and impact, you absolutely need to, if you're like me, lean into that discomfort and learn how to network and small talk and those things. And culturally, that is like, Jesus.
I would say in a group, say thank you. No matter how big or small the contribution is, appreciate it and say thank you.
So unless I am mistaken, no one up here on this stage has a formal degree in leadership. So where did you learn your leadership skills? And what advice would you have for the students and others attending today for how to develop those skills?
I think know your areas of strength and step out in confidence in those areas. And as a leader, know your areas of limitation and let someone else step out in their strength in those areas of limitation.
So some of my life training, I was a Girl Scout. I played sports, team sports. Even in elementary school, I went to a public elementary school, but we did group science projects by 6th grade. So we had that kind of interaction. You know, I come from a very verbal family, 4 siblings, 2 parents. And so learning how to engage happened at home first. I think that's where it started.
Also, to kind of echo from that as well too, sometimes when you're if you're in a professional environment, it's really hard to find your place in terms of leadership, but to have those extracurricular activities. I loved Fall Fest. Like, I looked forward to Fall Fest every year. It was not graded. It was something that I absolutely loved to do, and it was a leadership opportunity for me. Outside of my own work right now, I'm a member of the Junior League. After you graduate, it's a fantastic organization to be a part of, for you to exercise and to kind of hone your leadership skills so that you can bring that back into the workplace.
I used to stalk the leaders that I thought I liked their style. So you'll watch people and you're like, that is not what I want to be when I grow up, but that is. And so I would pester them until they talked to me.
I learned a lot by observation. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful supervisor my first job right after college. So I watched her, how she led and managed, and then when I took on some of the leadership work at that place, she also mentored me, and that was really helpful. And then later on, at that time, I didn't realize what I was doing. However, when I later on went to a job where there was really poor leadership and management, that's when I really appreciated what I had learned. And I also made mental notes of, okay, what are the things that I shouldn't be doing? So as I've grown into different roles and grown, I took these bits and pieces of, knowledge and applied them now.
Just seeing people, there are leaders all around all of us in whatever stage in life we're in. And like all the previous speakers have said, there are good ones and not so good ones. And then think about what is it about the good ones that you like and what is it about the not good ones that you don't like, and then synthesize that into creating your own version of, because there's so many good and bad examples, and you can learn as much from a bad example as you could from the good examples too.
Absolutely.
So instead of complaining or feeling oppressed by the bad leaders, you learn from them too.
Right. I love that. I think we had synthesize, some stalking, some self-awareness, stand up. We've got all the S's here. I love this. So we are almost out of time. And first off, in the spirit of
gratitude, I want to thank all of you for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for spending time with our students and our faculty and staff. I'm going to ask you to all quickly answer one final question, which is, what one piece of leadership advice do you wish that your younger self had received that would have equipped you for your journey?
I think for me, learning to set boundary. I wish I had learned that when I was younger, much younger.
Give yourself grace. We can want so much. We can want it so urgently. Giving oneself grace includes being able to receive feedback that we might not expect, because we're not always perfect and we make mistakes. And to be able to receive it gracefully and learn from it is much better than feeling harmed or unable to actually maybe make some important changes in your own style.
Patience. I think I'm a part of that microwave generation. You know, young folks don't know that, you know, it used to be you warmed everything up on the stove, you know, and then you had the microwave, so everything came in just a minute or a few seconds. And so to know that things take time. Things take time. So to have the patience that you need in order to progress forward, or the patience that you need to work with your team or individuals, to have that patience.
I would say, to go along with that, recognize that the people in leadership are people. It used to make me so mad because I wanted them to be better than people, but they all have their own strengths and weaknesses, and many of them got there inadvertently and don't have the self-reflection that you wish they have. And so I think just recognizing that they're people that have their flaws, and that doesn't mean you can't learn something or work with them.
Read more. Read outside your field. Now, I grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia. There's no libraries. So I didn't have a chance to read enough. I wish that somehow I could get more resources to read. And now I read all the time. And I'm so regretful that a lot of people don't read. They only read, you know, like little short things, and it's too long, they don't read it. So I don't know. I wish I could read more when I was small.
I think judge yourself well. I had the ability to judge myself well and value myself, so that, you know, there were good judgments and bad judgments, being able to accept the things that you do well and the things that you don't do well. When you judge yourself well and in a healthy way, other people's judgments might be valuable, but they become secondary. And that's a huge freedom.
I would say also to give yourself credit. I know earlier I just told you if you're working in a group, say we and not I, but there's sometimes in positions of leadership, it's really important for you to take a look and say, yeah, I really did accomplish this. A huge thing in STEM education is imposter syndrome. That's a huge thing that people talk about in graduate education, especially with women and minorities. And sometimes it's really important to just look and say, yeah, I did write that paper. I did get an A on this. I did deserve this. And to understand that and internalize that. It's not because of luck sometimes. It's because you really worked hard and you achieved something.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here today in conversation with us. Let's give all of our speakers today a huge round of applause.
Good Afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlotte Mayhew-Vale. I'm an assistant professor for leadership and leadership program director, and I believe we have one student who wanted to ask a question of this panel.
Hey guys, my name is Kaden Sturm. I am a Salem College student and I'm a sophomore studying health sciences and business administration. Earlier in the conversation, y'all had mentioned skills that y'all had or certain traits that had led you to your success. My question is kind of on the flip side. What skills did you really have to hone in order to, like, what did you lack coming into this that you really had to work hard to ensure your success?
Patience. That's why I said that first.
Listening skills, and I'm still working on it.
Organization skills, still not organized.
Time management.
I was going to say time management. Time management and organizational skills are very important, yeah.
I learned negotiation because sometimes when you want to lead things or do things, you want your way and you think you can just convince people. And, you know, there are lots of different folks involved in anything that you might want to do, and they come from different perspectives and sometimes want different approaches. So learning how to negotiate from values and understanding where other people are coming from, as opposed to from a win-lose proposition and I need to win, was really important.
Just to repeat, just patience, because I'm oftentimes frustrated. Why can't she see this? It's so clear. But I'm not her, so to see that other perspective and to be patient, to have room for that, is important, but it's not easy to do.
Well, thank y'all for y'all's insight, and I really, really appreciate y'all being here today on behalf of Salem College students. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Cadence, for coming up. As I mentioned, I'm Charlotte Vale. I'm an assistant professor for leadership and leadership program director at Salem College. I'm also a member of the Health Leadership Forum Planning Committee. And I just wanted to start us off by, again, thanking the speakers for their time, for their expertise, for their willingness to share their knowledge with our students, our faculty, community members. It has been an incredibly rich conversation in looking at issues and ideas from a range of lenses and how we can apply those to our next steps. So first of all, please join me in congratulating and thanking our panelists and speakers again. On behalf of the Health Leadership Forum Committee, I would like to thank you all for attending. We are so appreciative, again, of your time, which we know is incredibly valuable, and we hope that you can bring this information back to the spaces where you are, the classroom, professional environments, with colleagues, with family, and with friends. So thank you all for attending. And as my colleague Janae had said, I also have just a few announcements, and I realize that I am now the person standing between you and lunch. So a few notes for those in attendance seeking CEUs. We'd like to make sure that you please be sure that you have signed the registration sheet. Those receiving psychology credit should stop by the table to sign out. We'd like you to also scan the QR code on the signs to complete the form evaluation. This is incredibly important to us. We would very much appreciate your feedback, recommendations for next year's forum, so that we can really continue to plan an effective experience for you all. And with that, our next year's Health Leadership Forum is scheduled to be October 18th, 2024. So we will be sending out some information about that as well. And then we'll close our day with our networking lunch in the Salem Refectory Dining Hall. Emily Smith, another committee member, will be there to greet you as well as Salem alums and faculty. You will turn in your lunch ticket at the door, and you may choose your own table. Our speakers are joining us at lunch, so you may speak with them. And there's a QR code in the back of the program which indicates which table they will be sitting at. So please follow the students who are standing at the back of the auditorium to guide you to the refectory. This adjourns our program. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.